All right, and we're back here on BCB Live, the safest station in the nation, and I'm just going to bring in the Tenstreet team. How's that?
Outstanding. Let's do it.
Let's bring in the Tenstreet team. All right, we have Marilyn. How are you doing, Marilyn?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Advisory team at Tenstreet, and we also have Bryon, Wiebold over there, industry relations at Tenstreet. So we have, and then of course rounded off with Mike here at Tenstreet. So we got Tenstreet on the table. Why don't we let Mike? Why don't you start off? Why don't you just tell us what Tenstreet is?
Tenstreet is the premier applicant tracking software, and we take a driver from pre-hire all the way through with safety training, with DVI. We've got it all inside of the Tenstreet warehouse, and you know, actually Marilyn's probably a little bit better than I am, and she can go into her 20-minute elevator pitch that.
I don't need a 20-minute elevator pitch, Marilyn. He's bragging on you over here, Marilyn. Why don't you tell us? Why don't you tell me why I would want Tenstreet? How's that?
You would want Tenstreet because Tenstreet would, if you're a carrier, it would help you manage the entire life cycle of your driver, all the way through, like Mike said, beginning in the marketing and recruiting process, through onboarding and electronic DQF filing, all the way through to post-hire performance management. And you would also want it because it allows your drivers to do the same thing. It allows drivers to manage the entire life cycle of their career, and it allows you to create a single go-to point for drivers beginning in the recruiting process from a communication standpoint, so that you set the stage for them in recruiting to say, here, you're going to go to driver polls, this is where you're going to sign documents, this is where you're going to get your news and information as it relates to the company. And so then they know that all the way through their employment. A driver's job is to, pick up freight and deliver it on time safely, right? And when we have 25 different places that we're asking drivers to go to get information and send information, then things get confusing. And the same thing on the carrier side. And so that's why you want to use Tenstreet, and so that you can streamline and consolidate your processes, and then also you can improve your applicant and driver experience in the same way.
I like the idea and the concept, because the industry's turning to data points. It's turning to quick access of information like never before. I mean, back in the day, we used to move on a big board. We used to move
dispatch cards. Yep.
We used to have dispatch cards, and most people don't realize that a load board was something that you actually was a board with loads on it, and they pulled the stuff off and called the number on the 3x5 card. I don't know if you
remember those days. I was
dispatched, but I think it's turned into a little bit more by all data, because we have so much data to go through. We have a lot of data to input, a lot of data to do. And Bryon, as we do that, let me ask you a quick question. Is the driver themselves wanting something like this, as well as the carrier wanting something like this for the carrier to have?
Yeah, the biggest answer to that question, driver safety aid, is that the generation of drivers that are aging out and the younger drivers that are coming in, there's a much stronger expectation from the younger generations for this type of technology. And so what's important for a trucking company to understand is that the demand has grown and will continue to grow until eventually you're going to have a difficult time. You're already having troubles right now, but you're going to have a more difficult time in getting a driver to sit down and, for instance, fill out a paper application. They're just not going to do that. They're not going to take 45 minutes to an hour. They can do it under 5 minutes on an app on their phone, sitting, at a rest stop during their break. The biggest issue for trucking companies is siloed data. So all the technology systems that they have in place for whatever they're wanting to track, Excel spreadsheets, all of that stuff is siloed. And so it's real critical to allow your data to flow seamlessly from pre-hire, during the hiring process, all the way through post-hire data, and having that accessible not only to recruiters, with the safety professionals as well, HR professionals. And that's really what Tenstreet is designed to do, is just to streamline that entire process from pre-hire. I mean, you can even manage your advertising spend inside of Tenstreet and have a much more efficient process there, and know exactly where your applications are coming from and where to spend and put your advertising dollars. So this issue of data management is real critical. And then the last aspect of that is, what can you do proactively? It's nice to have data, but if it's siloed and you're looking at it as you dump it into Excel spreadsheets, all that is reactive. What we're trying to get to is a place where we're proactive with the data, so that it can impact the trucking company's profits, but also make a better environment that a truck driver will be happy with.
I think it's important to, and you getting to it, because everybody that you were talking to or talking about, the first question they're going to get is, how is this going to pay me dividends?
Right.
I mean, I'm not being silly about it at all, but I want to make sure that we understand, hey, I get it, this is kind of a process deal, but is it truly going to pay me dividends in the long term over the life cycle of the driver? Is it going to be what I need to do, in essence, to make it better? So that I can tell you right now, personally used Tenstreet and found it to be very helpful in making sure that checklist is done in order to get, and I instead of doing the old, okay, wait a minute, did he get, hold on a second, do we have, where is, I think I like the idea and the principle that you kind of follow the checklist that Tenstreet provides. You're going to have everything in there, because you're setting the guidelines as well, right? I mean, I'm going to set the guidelines. If I'm a carrier, I'm going to say, okay, you know what? I understand I'm going to need all these things, but I'd like to have these as well.
Right.
And Tenstreet's going to follow along in that. So, if you had to guess right off the bat, Mike, how soon would you see genuine dividends?
Oh, immediately. As a former client of Tenstreet before I came to work for them, I was able to cut my orientation from 4 days to a day and a half because of, as I brought this along to show you, this is uploaded with my CDL, my background, everything in the Tenstreet Pulse. I can apply for a job, I've got training, I've got fuel, parking, everything's right there. The driver can use it. They can upload that data, and then when they're looking for, if I want to click on jobs, and any of that job that my CDL matches or my history matches, I can apply to that job right now. That recruiter can start working my application that day, because if I went through and signed my releases that said, yes, I give Carrier A the opportunity to run my MVR, PSP, DAC,
right,
that recruiter's running it and going, you know what, Dave, you'd be the guy I want to put you in a truck today. So they're on the phone calling you. It speeds up the process and the time to hire by at least 75%.
I'll tell you what, that anytime you're saving 75% of time doing whatever it is you're doing, you're going to benefit yourself. Here is my question, Marilyn. I do agree that the next generation, the new generation that's coming up, is better equipped to handle the data, the information, and actually a little bit more comfortable with wanting to be out there on Yelp, right? They're wanting to be out there making sure and giving they're out there going, yeah, well, this place was okay. And you know how when you scroll through and you find something, I think that's kind of like what we're talking about here, that interaction already online. This also gives the new drivers that stuff. How do we get the older guys, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but the generation that we have now to also integrate into this with a little bit of better feel? I'm just curious. I know there's some hesitancy there, but how have you had success in that?
So I think whenever, I spent 12 years at a carrier and rolled out a lot of technology to a lot of drivers of all different ages. And I think if you're in a fleet and you're trying to get, different generations of drivers or older generations of drivers or skeptical drivers to adopt something, I think finding one of their peers and getting them to get on board and then let them tell the rest, right? Find a few ambassadors, find some of your toughest customers and win them over, and then they'll tell everybody once they're believers. And so that's really been my experience with older drivers and technology is that if someone will spend the time to show them how to use it properly and explain the benefits, then they will do it and they'll start using it and they'll love it. They'll be so happy and they'll be really your best spokesperson for whatever that technology is. And so that's always my go-to is who can I get that will spread the word and be a champion.
You know, the driver carrier relationship, it has so many levels to it, from beginning to end, longevity. It's unbelievable. I can tell you right now, the cost of a new hire, I mean, for somebody just for a turnover is unbelievable. I mean, it went up dramatically last year. From the previous years. I think this year it's going to level a little bit off. I think it just because of the market. But no matter what it is, it's still very expensive to have genuine turnover. And I'm curious. And I think that has a little bit to do with the life cycle of a driver with you in that turnover moment. How can Tenstreet help me? How can Tenstreet help me with turnover? Can you give me an idea? What would be a good way that Tenstreet could help me with that?
Absolutely. We have a company that we bought, Stay Metrics, that does surveys and analytical and things like that. Marilyn brought up a point this summer that we've been kind of working into, and I think it deserves looking into more. The drivers that have safety issues where you're having to talk to, train, retrain, coach, yeah. Have more of a proclivity to leave that carrier and go to another carrier where they don't feel like someone's looking over their shoulder. So by softening that approach with the safety department, I created a driver consult department, whatever it was. It wasn't safety coming after them. And that seemed to bring that down a little bit. Most of it is in how you deliver the news, how you talk to them, how you said it, when you begin in this segment here, the relationship. That is the key. If the carrier doesn't have a relationship with that driver, if it's just a dispatcher, driver manager, whatever you call it, they've lost. Anytime they got to talk to that guy, they want to, put the thumb on them, that's a problem. So by working with your safety, there's so many touch points to whether a driver stays with a carrier or not. It's all not about pay or the trucks or any of that anymore. It's about the total package, how he's treated, how he feels. Or she, correct. I'm sorry, I'm old.
So no problem with being old. It happens to all of us.
It happens to all of us. As that older generation, I've really embraced the use of technology. To your question a minute ago, a lot of my friends in our late 50s and early 60s are very in touch with technology. So that's going across the board, and it's all about those relationships that you have with your driver out there in the truck.
I tell you, it is important. The relationship that you have as a carrier is very important with the driver. When you talk about coaching and you talk about, I can tell you right now, it's very important. And just so that we're all clear, I don't really care how many miles a driver can drive. I care about how many safe miles a driver can drive. And in those days, and I drove years when I drove 3,000-4,000 miles a week. Yeah. Well, I can tell you right now, none of them were safe. In reality, if I was, and I'm telling you, those days are gone, and the pendulum has swung the other way, and as it should. And I'm very excited about that. Let's talk about how Tenstreet collectively can go into and help coach, help react, and help beyond just hiring, right? Beyond just the information. Why don't you jump in that, Marilyn? I know you're ready. Tell me how. I know, I can see you. You've leaned forward all the way because you're ready to go. Tell me how Tenstreet's going to help me beyond just the hiring cycle.
So, as Mike and Bryon have said, in that consolidation of data and removing the silos of data, Tenstreet is creating a place for a carrier to view all of those data points, so that when they're making those decisions on a driver, whether those are coaching decisions, termination decisions, training decisions, they can see the full picture And then they can also respond in the dashboard and coach and train in real time. So our integrations with safety telematics companies such as Lytix, Samsara, they carriers can view that footage and those alerts and violations in their Tenstreet dashboard, and then they can respond in one click. So they can assign a training video, they can send a warning, they can initiate a video call, like a mini safety meeting, if you will, to say, hey Joe, let's talk about this U-turn. You know that's against our company policy. Or, hey Joe, guess what? You did this amazing. This car was coming at you and trying to drive off a cliff and kill his family, and you handled that situation perfectly, because as you said, it's all about relationships and really consistency. So Tenstreet is going to allow you to get the information in real time and react in real time, and also put processes and automation in place that allow you to be able to do so. I mean, there's so much data and information coming at carriers that they really need tools and resources to be able to respond to all of it every single time, and that's what Tenstreet is going to give them.
You know, we're sitting here talking, and I'm going to ask you, Bryon, right off. I'm going to ask you, why is it so important, and how can we utilize the post driver, because he's gone, but Tenstreet's going to add to that by doing an exit interview, right, and giving some of the reasons. So why is that important for me as a carrier?
Well, it's extremely important because you want to impact your culture to where drivers will stay. And one of the biggest issues for drivers leaving is the way that a company communicates with them. And so when you're operating in Tenstreet, what you're doing is actually changing your culture, and you're opening up lines of communication between the drivers and the office staff and those that deal with the driver on a daily basis. And in recruiting, that using Tenstreet sends a strong message and gives a level of expectation of what the driver can expect as far as communication throughout the entire process of working with that company, all the way through to retention. So, with our retentions and rewards program and our safety management integrated, they're not just getting pinged or getting communicated to when things go bad. They're getting points, they're getting rewards, they're getting acknowledgement, communicating to them that way. But then providing them that opportunity on the safety side to be coached and to be trained so that they're improving in their professional career as a driver. But the retention aspect is so critical because the cost to hire, as you mentioned earlier, Dave, is astronomical. So anything that can be done, probably one of the biggest issues is the scorecarding of drivers that you're able to do inside of Tenstreet. So a carrier is able to put a bonus schedule together, a point schedule together, based upon activities and things that occur during the life cycle of a driver, and you're able to pull up your drivers, and you can see the ones that are putting you at risk, that are performing exceptionally, and then those that are just middle of the road drivers, that are good solid drivers. So having this kind of information is important, but the communication with the driver all the way through his tenure with the company is essential. The biggest issue for a driver in leaving a company is they feel more like an asset rather than a human being, and that comes from drivers. That's not me saying that. So they want to have that type of communication. They want to know if there's an issue, and they submit that. How are they going to submit that issue? And then how are they going to know where that issue stands? And what's the communication back towards that issue? And there's so many things that open up and come to an existence in the life of a driver that the company has to be sensitive to that. And so that's really what Tenstreet does. We connect carriers with drivers, not just in the hiring process, not just the onboarding process, but through their post-hire, all the way through to their tenure with the company.
I think it's very important, and as we've come to learn, transparency is necessary in order that the carriers have with the drivers. I think the days of, just go pull the load, and we'll call you later. I think those days are gone, because I do like the idea. And let me just tell you, you don't want, every time safety calls, you don't want to just roll your eyes and answer the phone.
Right.
And I think it's important that we learn that today. And I don't care if you have Tenstreet or you don't have Tenstreet right now. If somebody does something well, or they demonstrate improvement, they should be told so.
Well, Dave, I'm going to tell you, at senior executive level at a trucking company, I was really bad about that's the way we've always done it.
Oh,
you know, that's a killer. By working for Marilyn, I've learned over this last year that I wasn't always right about some of the actions I took with my drivers. And, you know, we've got to look at these new things. It's like you said a few minutes ago, even the cents per mile doesn't make sense anymore like it used to back in our day. It's a total different game changer today. You can't run those kind of miles, so pay should be scheduled on a different schedule than what it is now. It's not in my control to take care of, but, you know, the driver would feel better if he was paid by the hour. I did some, you know, survey, you know, experimentation, if you want to say, with some of my regional fleets. Paid those guys on a day rate or a per hour rate, and it worked out so much better. My turnover dropped. The driver engagement went up. They're safe because they are protecting that lane. That's their lane that gets them home or keeps them close to the area. You know, and I think when senior management starts looking at how we actually treat our drivers and changing that, there's several carriers out there doing a very good job about changing that up. But yeah, it's all in how you communicate with that driver. It's the end result that gets that load down the road. That's why we all get paid.
I do like the idea of looking at alternative ways to find solutions, because I've come to the realization over time, having been both sides of the fence as you have, I just think, to me, the formula for success for a driver is different on every single driver. They each have their own formula. Yes. Gary might need to be home for church every Sunday, right? Or whatever the case is, or Bob might have to be home every other weekend because that's when he gets his kids from in his divorce. I'm just saying we all have different formulas for success, and I think we've got to, if you want them to be successful, we as a team, on no matter how you do it, we as a team have to find a way to be successful with that driver.
Well, one of the things I did, which was crazy at the time, I would actually have an idea of who my driver managers were. I had a profile set on them. A new driver would come through orientation and we would do some interactions. We would have them fill out some profiles and look at themselves. It didn't make sense to put a guy that's going to Sunday school wearing a bow tie with my driver manager that wears leathers and has, you know, every other word is a 4-letter word. Those two are not going to work. He's going to leave my truck. He's going to quit. He's going to go somewhere else. Finding a driver manager's personality, you know, just that little bit extra made such a difference in retaining the good drivers. And it wasn't that one was better than the other. It was just the way that their personalities interacted with dispatch, which is the person they deal with, you know, 90% of the time.
I'll tell you what, Tenstreet, we got it out here. We've thrown it out here, and I want to make sure that we all know that we're highlighting it. If anybody's interested in Tenstreet, Marilyn, how do they get the information? What's the best way? Talk to me. Uh-oh.
I think we lost her. Let her know we lost her.
Oh, Marilyn, we lost you. You dropped. We can't hear you. Did you mute? There you are.
Now can you hear me? There
Yes, ma'am.
I think you muted me. I'm kidding. You can go to our website, tenstreet.com. You can find any of us on LinkedIn. You can email sales@tenstreet.com. Any of that, you can find all the information you need if you go to our website and find out everything that we do. You can download the Driver Pulse app if you're a driver, or if you're a carrier, frankly, and you just want to see how it works, go out to the App Store and download Driver Pulse and put in your information and do some zooming around and check it out.
And if you're a driver, you should also get involved with Tenstreet, right? I mean,
absolutely, yes.
It's not, it doesn't cost them anything at all, does it? Right? If I'm a driver out there, it doesn't cost me anything at all to jump on, right?
No, and that's what that Pulse app, it shows. It has parking, we have fuel, there's things we didn't even get into that we do. Yeah.
All kinds of cool stuff. It's like candy in a jar. You just got to reach in and get some, right? I mean, kind of like that. And yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Lollipops, or are we talking like free bubble gum, or what are we talking? Whatever.
Hey, you know, there is drivers. There's also on the app. There's ways to connect with other drivers so that they can, you know, kind of build that network of drivers and ask questions about carriers and industry and those types of things, and kind of get acclimated and meet their peers.
Well, I'll tell you what, thank y'all so much for coming in today, being on the show, talking with us here on BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. I'll tell you what, I'm going to do this. Mike, I got you in studio, so I'm going to have you do it. I want you to state your name, who you're with, and that you're watching BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. Can you do that, sir?
I can do that. This is Mike Coble with Tenstreet. You're watching BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. And thank you, drivers, for what you do safely every day.
There you go. I tell you what, appreciate all of you. I hope you all have a great weekend, and thank you all for coming on today.